Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Libertarian Front. I'm your host, Joe Pometto. I wanted to talk about this article, this news story that came out over the weekend or late last week. And I'm going to use this New York Post article to do it. Trump cries fake news at report about plan to end Ukraine war by asking ally to give Russia territory. So I want to talk about this because the media, the article was originally, I think, posted or came out in the Wall Street Journal, and a lot of other news organizations have run stories on this, and they've made it seem to be an absolutely terrible thing. Now, I'm not taking one side or another, but let's talk about the merits of what this theoretical Trump plan is or would be. If you like Libertarian Front, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. It's a new channel. I'm looking to get growth here. We talk about politics from a libertarian perspective. Any like, any subscribe, any comment, any share goes a huge way towards helping this channel survive and thrive. So if you like my content, you can support it absolutely free. So here we're going to start with the article. Former President Donald Trump cried fake news on a report that the leading Republican presidential candidate has a plan to end the Ukraine war. The report claimed Trump had a plan that revolved around pressuring the American ally to give up some of its territory to the invading Russian forces. Sources familiar with the alleged plan told the Washington Post, I first saw it in the Wall Street Journal, so it looks like it was a Washington Post story, that Trump is workshopping the idea behind closed doors, which would see Ukraine give up Crimea and the Donbass border region to Moscow in exchange for a ceasefire to the war that has claimed tens of thousands of lives. If elected, Trump, who has previously touted that he could end the war within 24 hours, reportedly believes that both Russia and Ukraine want to save face. They want a way out, according to one source who discussed the plan with him. The former president also believes that citizens in the occupied Ukrainian territories would be okay with being assimilated into Russia. A Trump campaign advisor slammed the Washington Post report as fake news, insisting that his boss will not settle on a peace plan until he is in office and can properly weigh all the options. The whole thing is fake news from the Washington Post. They're just making it up. President Trump is the only one talking about stopping the killing. Joe Biden is talking about more killing. The reported plan will be a concession for the Kremlin, which had already declared plans to completely annex Crimea and the greater Donbass region, as well as the bordering lands, as part of its invasion, which began in 2022. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly stated that his nation would not surrender any of its land to the invading Russian forces. Trump's plan is also a far shift from the current administration's goals, which seek to provide long-term support to Ukraine to defend itself against Moscow and prevent the Russian state from encroaching further into Eastern Europe. Much of Trump's talk on the campaign trail and with congressional Republicans regarding Ukraine revolves around resisting the Biden administration's call to provide additional funding to Kyiv, which is still experiencing a shortage of ammunition. Last month, Trump claimed he would need just one day to bring peace to the region if reelected, telling Fox News host Sean Hannity that it would be easy to negotiate a deal between Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. If it's not solved, I will have it solved in 24 hours with the Zelensky and with Putin. And there's a very easy negotiation to take place, but I don't want to tell you what it is because then I can't use that negotiation, Trump said, keeping all the details to himself. Trump has repeatedly claimed that what happens in Ukraine is not a vital U.S. strategic interest, adding that worries should be put on Europe, which he said should pay the bulk of the aid. So, you know, let's look at something real quick here because the media, I don't it's hard to say when stories are reporting on Donald Trump if it's just a straight up hit piece. But hold on one second here. Ukraine Russia war. But let's look at how many people have died in this Russo-Ukrainian war. I think we can get a number up here. Well, they're not providing it right off the top. Casualties in the Russo-Ukrainian War. Casualties in Russo-Ukrainian War. And I think we're going to find, I don't necessarily believe, I as funny as it sounds, I think that that Wikipedia, and maybe I have to change the structure here. Here we go. Okay, well, reports vary widely. See casualties for details. The reports do vary widely, but if we go down here we go. Ukrainian civilians, 10,000 killed, 19,000 wounded. Ukrainian forces, 45,000 killed. Russian forces, 50,000 killed. And Russian separatist forces, 23,000 killed. So by, most estimates we're looking at easily 150,000 deaths in this war. So it's a modern war over territory. It's extremely bloody. There's a lot of death and there's a lot of killing, and it had an interesting arc, right? Like, when Russia first invaded, everybody thought that Russia was going to easily take Ukraine. Ukrainian forces fought back extremely heroically and not only slowed the Russian advance, but later on in the war took back large sections of the territory that was taken by Russia. And when you look at other statistics, right, Russia is a country of, I believe, over 200 million people, and Ukraine, 144 million. Look, they gave it to us right here on Wikipedia. Ukraine is 38 million. So Russia is more than 3 times the size of the Ukraine when it comes to population, and also much, much larger when it comes to area, resources, etc. So Ukraine fought back heroically as a huge underdog in this war. And now the war has grinded to somewhat of a halt, and it's almost World War I style, right? It's not quite trench warfare, but neither side has been able to advance much in the latter part of the war, which is about the past year or so. So talking about a negotiation, I think, makes a lot of sense. And here's something else too. The Russians basically have controlled the Crimea since 2014, and I don't think Ukraine really was that optimistic about gaining the Crimea back. Until this greater war happened and they got aid from the Western powers, because they had nowhere near the military capacity to do that prior to the huge amount of military and monetary aid that they've received. So Crimea was almost gone from the Ukraine already. And it's also true that what the article says is that much of the Donbass region, and I don't believe Russia even controls all of it, is Russian speaking. It's Russian language. Now, I agree that we don't want to encourage Russia to continue to gobble up the land of its neighbors. It sets an extremely bad and dangerous precedent. But also, how long can this war go on? 5, 10, are we looking at a 5 to 10 year war? And let's remember too that the United States used a similar rationale in the Vietnam War. The difference is in the Vietnam War, the Americans, we were giving up our own blood to fight that war. But the idea was we can't allow communism to spread. We can't set a bad precedent, which allows, the communist countries to gobble up the countries around them. And that war didn't work out the way that the United States hoped or wanted. Now, this war is similar in that sense. It's, well, we can't let Vladimir Putin or an authoritarian country just go in and gobble up the countries around it. And I agree, there has to be a norm where it's extremely taboo for other countries to just invade other countries as a good old fashioned land grab. However, at what cost? At what cost? The Western powers in Ukraine have already inflicted great pain upon Russia. So, in terms of damage to their economy and in human lives and military assets destroyed, Russia has taken a huge shot. And I would say that Russia is probably going to not be too confident about invading other countries again after this. Now, you have to talk about the degree of pain that you want to inflict upon Russia before you negotiate, because the truth is, will Ukraine ever be able to truly defeat Russia? I mean, the longer they have to dig in the Donbass and in the Crimea, absent overwhelming offensive force, and I don't think that Ukraine just has the manpower to do that, let alone the technology or equipment, it's going to be extremely difficult to dislodge Russia. So to me, it seems like it's more about how much pain that the great powers or the Western powers inflict upon Russia before they come to the negotiating table. And I imagine, and I could be wrong, that I doubt that the Ukraine would get the Crimea back in a negotiation, but I bet they could get a lot of the other territory in Ukraine proper back. I'm not saying all of it, but a certain amount of it. And if there's a deal where the Ukraine joins NATO and the European Union and then Russia, retains some of the territory, in a territory where it's mostly Russian-speaking individuals, I don't think that that's necessarily that terrible of a deal. I really don't. So, but I agree. Let me just say this here. I'm not a policymaker. I'm not in a position to to really make decisions without more information or intelligence, which is what the Trump campaign is saying. But I tend to think that it may be true that Donald Trump might, at least he would begin talking about negotiations, because currently the stance of the Western powers in Ukraine is that there's just nothing, and Putin can't come to the table, and it could save a lot of lives. How many lives are worth territory? How many lives are worth inches of land? It's hard to say. I think Ukraine largely can look at this as a victory, as Russia's true goal was to take the entire country. And they've substantially stopped that and inflicted massive amounts of pain on Russia. But I'm not a Ukrainian. And so, it's difficult for me to stand in their shoes and say, they should do this or they should do that. And I also don't have the information. But the way the media sort of dropped this out here, it actually may, this story may actually help Donald Trump. It may actually help Donald Trump if people believe that he has a way of ending the war. So, on second thought, it's probably a good piece of reporting. It will be interesting to see. I think it's one of the most interesting issues and consequential issues that are coming up in the upcoming election. And, you know, from a libertarian perspective, like, let's save lives. You know, let's, I mean, I'm a former military guy, so there's certainly war has to be an option, and fighting has to be an option at times. But this one appears to have ground to a halt. And absent the full collapse of the Russian state, I'm just not sure that Ukraine has any chance of coming out on top. But you know, you never know. Everything will look good until the collapse happens. So, all right, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you gained something interesting from this video. My opinions, my thoughts on this news article. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. This is Libertarian Front. I am Joe Palmetto. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.